This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. The Living Asset template continues with the offering by Respectonomics, and our team has put together this arrangement, this discussion about the way in which a corporation is very much aligned to the human body. We have said in our more recent series, we have pointed out that the word corporation is derived from the Latin corpus, meaning a body, so that if we look at our own body, we have every right to mirror that into the corporation. Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley is my name. I am the voice of Respectonomics. And what we're doing here is we've looked at the corporation in the context, again, of the body, and we've looked at the brain, we've looked at the heart, we've looked at the soul, and this time what we're doing is we're looking at the feet of an individual. And if you think about your feet for a moment, the key to our feet is they represent what you would commonly call transportation. It is the feet that allow us to move around in whatever direction we try and move in. And at the same time, we are aware of this concept of transportation. Transportation, in the broadest sense, is the movement of people and goods, energy, and information. And if we think about the whole concept of transportation, we understand that at every venue in our lives, transportation is key. Whether you're in the coffee shop, the data center, a pipeline, railroad, a bus line even, education, each one of these involves a degree or combination of transportation. We would be transporting people, goods, energy, and information. But the interesting thing about our feet is, then, if we accept that this is the concept of transportation, let's go and look at this one step further then. But it's interesting that the feet are the furthest point away from the control center. If I look at my human body, I understand that it is my brain that is giving and my nervous system that arranges for this to happen, but it is my brain that sends the signals to the feet. And it is, of course, the longest point between one point on a human body and another. And what this means is that the reliability and the effectiveness of the feet depends on full communication. Without further ado, the concept of communication in a corporation is absolute in the sense that we understand that the product that the corporation is offering depends entirely on good communication. Let's take a look at our feet from other points of view. In the real world, our feet define direction. You know, if you take a misstep, that is when things go really wrong. You were meant to turn to the left and you turn to the right, you stumble, you decide that you're going to go backwards instead of forwards. Missteps are very, very expensive. And in one sense, when one's feet are misstepping, they are in fact out of line with the real intentions of the brain. So if the brain, the leadership of the corporation, isn't effectively arranging to manage the feet, it is logical, it's rational to say that the business is not getting full value for its money. We've talked about defining the direction, we've talked about the missteps, but here's something really interesting about feet. It really surprised us, it surprised the team, that when we look at our human body, we obviously want it to be perfect, don't we? You want to have a perfect complexion. You want to have perfect hands. You want to have perfect demeanor, perfect looks, perfect, perfect, perfect. But there's one area of our lives that we demand perfection, and that's our feet. In a sense, the classic example is the pilot who flies a plane some 5,000 miles or 8,000 kilometers, flies the distance, misses the runway by approximately 100 meters. and then comes back after the plane is completely demolished and says, "But I got you all that way, so why are you complaining about the 100 meters at the end?" We demand perfection of a pilot. We demand perfection of a neurosurgeon. You never want to hear him or her say, "oops." And we demand perfection of our feet. And if we're going to demand perfection of our feet, then we need to be paying attention to the feet, don't we? And it's very difficult, in a sense, anatomically even, to look at one's feet. The classic example is that you get a splinter or a sliver in your foot, how difficult it is to get out. And we go into these sort of anatomical contortions trying to find it and pull it out and extract it and so on. The answer is that our feet are difficult to work with, in a sense. When they're working, we don't even think about it. When they're not working, we really think about it. Take another look at the feet. The load factor is quite remarkable. A few statistics. A foot is 1.5% of our body mass. It fits 7 times into the total height of our own being. Only 1/5 of our foot is actually in contact with the ground physically at any time. And what it really comes down to then is when we look at our feet, when we take this into the corporate context and we expand this metaphor, this allegory, what we find is that the feet, in a sense, are the epicenter of all of the investment of the corporation. And if that is the case, then it stands to rational thinking that we would want to spend more time, more attention, and more diligence looking after our feet. But I want to point out one thing to you, and that is that our feet carry an incredible load. The math that we've just shown explains very clearly how much weight we put on our feet. And it's true in all our personal lives that when we try and carry too much, we end up stumbling, or usually do, or putting some kind of damage into our muscles or somewhere. And the answer is that when the load is too heavy, our feet can be the victims. One of the responsibilities we have is to be able to address another human being's loads. Let me give you an example. You're in an industrial park, way away from the epicenter of the ivory towers and all of the brain centers of the world, all the way from Wall Street, wherever it might be. You're in this industrial park, and in this dark corner, there's a warehouse, and in this warehouse, there's a new employee who's just started. And that employee is struggling with these loads of cartons of paper or something, but struggling around and not having a very good time moving stuff around in the warehouse. That alone is part of the transportation module. But I want you to go one step with me, please. And that is the CEO calls by into this warehouse. And when the CEO sees this struggle going on, says to the individual, "Can I help to lighten the load? May I help to lighten the load?" And this is the clarion call that the leadership today, political, corporate, community, wherever it may be, needs to be able to go to people, goes to the proverbial subordinates, and say, "What can I do to lighten the load?" Now that sounds like a sort of moral thesis, but let's turn this around for a minute and recognize that that is also a question that can be reciprocal. It is incumbent on us to be able to go to leadership, to go to management, to go to the political echelons and actually ask them that same question. What can we do to lighten the load? It's a reciprocal arrangement. So understanding the feet of the human body is a direct allegory for the corporation or the political template. Wherever you're looking, where there's an organization, there's feet that manage the transportation. And without transportation, all is lost. The cup of coffee doesn't arrive on your desk. The telephone doesn't work. The Wi-Fi doesn't work. The schooling fails. The railroad stops. There's no fresh vegetables in the grocery store. Transportation is key. The feet is what does it. And if we're going to agree that the feet is what does it, then I think we also need to respect the feet and see what we can do to lighten the load. But I want to go one more step with this. The lightening the load is one part of it, but there's another aspect, and that is our feet carry these loads. And as much as we do very well carrying these loads, there is one word that comes to mind when you think of your feet, and that is balance. Without balance, the strongest muscles, sinews, knees, anything you want, the brain power of an Einstein, all is lost when we do not have balance. And when we are struggling with balance, one of the things we do is to use our hands. If you've ever been on a boat that's rocking around, you will stand on your feet, realize you're going to tip over, and you grab a guardrail. And we grab guardrails in all kinds of different situations. But try balancing without hands, in the literal sense. Try standing on one foot without using hands. We use our hands as a balancing item. And if we don't have the use of the hands, our balance is at risk. If we have this initiative, then, that we can use our hands, we can also, and this is really crucial, we can look at hands from another individual to help us. When we fall over, there's two things that can happen. Well, three really. One is we can get up. But without that, we can also use our hands to help us up, or we can use the hands of someone else. And when that someone else comes to raise us up and puts their hand out and lifts us up out of the, if we've fallen on the sidewalk or whatever it is, what that does is it signals a willingness to help. And that willingness to help is in direct antithesis and opposition to indifference, criticism, or exploitation. One of the risks we find in the political venues, in the corporate platforms, we see a stumble, we see somebody or something has lost its balance. And we look at it rather than saying with empathy, we look at it as being, there's one that's fallen. Our responsibility is to express this willingness to help by extending our hand. And that is a balance that needs to be restored when we're stumbling. We can ask ourselves, what does the balance look like? Or rather, what do these hands look like that will bring us back into balance? And there are two words that come to mind. That from the senior management levels to the junior management levels to the working levels at every level. And that is when we express appreciation and gratitude, we have a far better chance of keeping people and ourselves in balance. Now, having explored this idea of lightening the load and also understanding the use of hands to be able to reach to people and to raise them back up again, when we recognize these two things, we're left with this classic question. So what does this all mean? What's the significance? And the significance is this. When the feet are pointing in the right direction, when we have the full support of the body, when we're in balance, when we know there are willing hands to keep us, as it were, our guardrails, when we find that there's a place of gratitude and appreciation, when we bring all this together, we in fact, corporately, personally, bilaterally, in the family life, every which way you look, we end up with new vistas, new possibilities. Taking care of the feet is a wonderful way to expand and to increase our effectiveness, our productivity. In the corporate world, it brings a new life, new directions. And think of one thing. When there's no movement, when there's inertia, the plant will die. The corporation goes nowhere. We need the movement. The movement depends on the feet, and the feet, well looked after, provide these new vistas, new opportunities. I rest my case, but in so doing, I also recommend that we bring these thoughts forward in the form of workshops, presentations, consultations, speeches, and whatever, but to bring corporations particularly together to understand not only the majesty of the human body, but how that very majesty can be integrated, inculcated is maybe the right word even, can be brought into the very fabric of the corporation. Jeremy at respectonomics.com. Give us a call and our team will be there to help you. Thank you.